Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Radiant Lawcast. I'm your host, Sena, and joining me for the very first time in our in-house legal Gamechangers series is Jenny Whiteman from Federated Hermes. How are you doing, Jenny?
I'm very well, thanks. I'm very pleased to be here. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you so much for joining us. As you know, we are having a series of conversations on very interesting topics with very, very interesting individuals. And thank you so much for taking the time to jump on this call with me.
No problem. I'm honoured to be involved.
Appreciate it so much. Let's get right into it. I wanted to just, as customary for us on the show, is to chat about everyone's journey so far. I mean, we all have different journeys that influence how we get to certain stages in our career. And I wanted to chat about yours, your professional journey before you got to where you are now.
Yeah, okay. With pleasure. I always knew I wanted to be a lawyer. I'm not sure why. There were no lawyers in my family, but I blame it on the TV shows in the 90s that made it seem like a very glamorous career. So I decided to study law at university. And while I was at university, started thinking about the kind of law I might want to practice. And initially, I was quite attracted by the idea of doing something like criminal law and being a barrister. So in the UK, barristers are the lawyers that go into court and wear the wigs and the gowns and
Yes.
do the doing. But actually, lots of the big city law firms came to my university to speak to the law students, and I ended up getting quite interested in maybe training with one of the city firms, and I did a summer vacation placement with the firm Eversheds. They're now Eversheds Sutherland.
Mm-hmm.
So this was during the summer holidays between my second and third years at university. So I had a really great 2-week summer vacation scheme there, and at the end of that, they offered me a training contract. Which I accepted. So I started my training contract at Eversheds in September 2001. So that was 2 years of lots of hard work, but lots of
Yes.
learning. And
Yeah.
and Eversheds was a really great firm. The people were really great to learn from, very inspiring, and there was a really kind of collegiate spirit. So I really felt kind of at home and part of the firm, and I ended up staying there when I qualified.
Mm-hmm.
So having initially thought that I may be a criminal barrister, I ended up qualifying in a big corporate city firm, which wasn't really my plan, but sort of I kind of went along with it. And I decided that I wanted to qualify into the commercial department, because the thing that I really enjoyed working on as a trainee was commercial contracts, a really broad range of contracts for lots of different clients in different sectors. So I qualified into the commercial contracts team in the commercial department.
Yeah.
And as a junior lawyer, I was exposed to a really broad range of work. We had clients in lots of different industries. We did quite a lot of work in the transport industry. So I worked on lots of the big rail franchise agreements. So in the UK, our railways are sort of privatised, and they're sort of let out to different private companies. So I was involved in putting those agreements together. And then I was sent on a lot of secondments to different clients. So different clients in different industries. At the beginning of 2008, I was seconded to where I am now, Hermes, now Federated Hermes, to work on a particular project. And it was my first experience of working in financial services, and in particular, my first experience of investment management. So I was thrown in with very little knowledge or experience of the industry. I was really thrown in at the deep end, but I really embraced it and I really enjoyed it. And I think that it really taught me that learning on the job is the best way, because there's only so much you can learn in a classroom or a book. You've got to just be in it, I think, to really understand it. I was initially meant to be here for 6 months, and then the project it was an outsourcing project. The project ended up taking longer, as these things often do. So it ended up being a year. And then towards the end of the year, I was supposed to be getting ready to go back to Evershares. And actually, I started thinking, I don't really want to go back. By that point, I'd had so much experience in-house that I knew that was where my path was going. That was
and
what
this is 2008, thereabouts.
Yeah, 2008.
Wow.
And I started talking to the head of legal here about whether there might be an opportunity for me to stay. And, it worked out really well for me because essentially they had a year to get to know me and get to see my work. I'd had a year to get to know them. And the team and the business. And she kind of made a role for me. And I'm still here 14 years later.
14 years later.
However many years it is. And, it has changed massively. My role has really evolved and changed. The business has changed hugely. And I'm definitely the longest serving member of the legal team. And, looking around the office, I'm often, I'm considered one of the old timers, but there are real benefits, I think, that come with that, particularly having someone in the legal team that has been around a long time, because I've got the corporate memory, the experience of why things are as they are and why we did things the way we did and why certain structures are set up in the way that they were. So, yeah, I've been here a pretty long time, but, I think I sort of think to myself every few months, am I still happy here? Am I still learning?
And is it still progressing the way you want?
Yeah, exactly. And I keep getting ticks in those boxes because I never quite know what's going to land on my desk next. And it has continued to throw different challenges at me.
Yeah.
And I'm still growing. And I think, well, while that's still the case, and while I'm still happy here, and I've got some really kind of great relationships with my stakeholders, I think, well, why would I change that? Why would I throw that away to go somewhere else?
To go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because you did mention that you, from watching TV series, there's the wigs and the codes, and we call them advocates in South Africa, the barristers. So solicitors would be your attorneys, and then advocates would be the guys who go to court and wear the wigs. But TV, and so, I'm not sure if you watch Suits, but I grew up on Suits, which was probably a bit much later. So Suits and Scandal and How to Get Away with Murder and all that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
You start watching those shows and it glamorizes court practice. And you think, I really just want to be that cool. I want to be the next Harvey Specter. I want to be the next Mike Ross, the next Annalise Keating. I just want to be the cool person in court and, throwing lines and walking away and just making everything seem so cool, right? So it's interesting to me how your journey's evolved over all the years, from wanting to be that person in we like to call it the traditional legal practice sense, where you're in the court, you're arguing, you're doing what everyone thinks a lawyer does.
The stereotypical,
exactly. To end up being in an in-house role. Besides the fact that you were at Federated Hermes now for a long time, or maybe that year that you enjoyed, were there any other push factors from the traditional space to move away from the kind of law firm practice to go in-house, besides just the fact that familiarity was there?
Yeah, I mean, it's all of the sort of classic disadvantages or complaints, I suppose, that you hear about private practice. The long hours. I think, as a junior lawyer, you feel very you feel like your life isn't really your own. So you are very much beholden to what the clients want, but also what the partners are expecting of you.
Yes.
So there's a real expectation, I think, that that your
time is not yours. Well, you accept it. Okay, once I do these 2 years, I'll eventually get to a point where the time becomes my time. So I'll just deal with it for now.
Yeah, exactly. But also, for me, I think, and actually probably more importantly, I felt one of the things that I really like about in-house and that you don't really get in private practice is you're very much more embedded in what the business is doing. So in private practice, you normally will step in and get to know the client and get to know a very particular project or transaction deal. And then once it's done, you step away again, and you never really hear
what happened.
What happened? What happened next? What happened with this
project I was working
or
on,
merger, and how did the people kind of go on to live with this post transaction? And so I think that for me the other push factor was that in an in-house role I'd be kind of living through that on the client side and seeing the whole life cycle of everything that I'm working on. And that has really that has really been the case in my career. And actually, because I've been here for so long now, I have set things up and taken them apart and set new things up again. So, sometimes it's a bit soul destroying because I'm terminating arrangements that I worked so hard to put in place a few years ago. But, that's the evolution. And that's, it's all part of the experience.
It's funny you should actually say that. In a previous video, one of the latest ones, I was actually talking to someone and I said, I come from an intellectual property law background. So if you understand IP, so it comes from a marketing team that comes up with a trademark or something, and then they'll come to the law firm for a trademark search, and if it's available, they'll file to register it. And then after registration, as the lawyer, you step away, and then you just wait in the wings in case of an infringement or renewal or something along those lines, right? And I felt very disassociated from the whole process. And I was saying previously that I just jump in during the search. I don't even know how marketing came to that trademark or was the inspiration behind it. And oftentimes as lawyers, I'd be very surprised, like when maybe you say to marketing, oh no, this trademark isn't available, come up with another one. But I have no idea how many meetings they sat in trying to come up with just that brand name. And even after completion, I don't even know how well the product's doing in the marketplace. I don't even know how well the brand is performing. I'm just there and there. So I do feel like if you are in-house, you kind of see the whole process from the conception right up until the end, right up until the brand is out there.
But it's really funny because you kind of have to be careful what you wish for, because sometimes I feel like I'm too involved, and I'm sitting in meetings thinking this isn't really a legal meeting. They don't really need legal advice here. But it really enriches the experience, I think, and you feel much more part of something. So, in a law firm, you're selling legal advice, you're selling your legal expertise. Well, here we're not selling legal expertise. We're selling investment products, and for me it's much more inspiring to be part of that and to be giving my legal input into that and creating something, a different product, but thinking, knowing that I have been a critical part of that product coming to life, really.
And one of the things that I sort of have about South African legal practice is that I feel it's very archaic sometimes. Sometimes I feel it's very traditional. The gowns and the wigs, I don't get it, but maybe someone else does. Maybe someone else likes it. I personally think maybe we're past that time. Do you often feel the same way about the UK legal practice, in the sense that it's still very structured in a particular way, doesn't offer any room for improvement in a moving forward type of sense?
Gosh, that's quite a hard question to answer. I do think it's changing. I mean, I think that good lawyers in private practice do have an appreciation that they really need to understand their client's business in order to provide good quality advice. And I do think that they understand that they need to evolve and they need to use technology in an efficient way and an appropriate way to kind of get ahead. But also, I think it's not just client demand that's driving that. I think it's the kind of younger generation of lawyers coming through that are also driving that, and they don't want to be a part of the archaic legal firm system anymore. They want to see change as well. So I think change is happening, but I think it's taking a long time, and I think that possibly lawyers like to think that they're above all of the the kind of technological developments and change, and that we don't need to change. But I think that actually that attitude is changing.
It is changing. And do you think that tech and the use of tech in law firms, or the use of tech by lawyers, do you think that will bring the necessary sort of forward movement that we're looking for, just to make legal practice better? I've had some lawyers say, I'm not too sold on adopting legal tech. So for example, you might have a software which could improve the way that you draft, the way that you read contracts, the way that you, I don't know, clean up a document or generate contracts, right? There are software nowadays there's software available nowadays where you don't have to sit down, clause one, enter, and then draft each clause. You can generate an automated sort of template. Do you think that stuff is beneficial, or do you think it's like more lip service in a way? I had a colleague who thinks that the adoption is what's lacking, but the idea and the intention is there.
I think it really depends on what you're trying to use it for. So, I've seen some really impressive tech that litigators can use to trawl through all of the evidence. And I can see, I'm not a litigator, and thankfully don't get involved in disputes very often, but I can imagine that having the ability to kind of scan through huge amounts of information and pinpoint particular words or phrases or particular pieces of information would be incredibly useful and incredibly efficient. When I think back to my trainee days of kind of sitting in a room, going through boxes and kind of paginating pages, I think those days have gone, and I think that's really for the better. But I do think that there is a tendency to think that you can use tech to fix everything, and I'm not sure that you can. But also, I think that lawyers have a natural kind of suspicion of any tech that potentially looks as if it could take away work from us. And you kind of think, well, I don't think the computer can review a contract to as high a standard as I can. So I think, look, I think I'm kind of open-minded about it, and I do use some contract kind of auto generation tools that actually Radiant have helped set up for me, and they're really great, but for particular circumstances. So I think that the tech is really good and has the potential to be really good, but on a very much kind of situation specific case by case basis, that you really have to kind of be sure that what you're trying to achieve is what the tech is kind of helping you with, and that you're not just using it for the sake of it.
Okay. I wanted to chat about Federated Hermes in particular. So you joined the company, I guess now 14 years. You've been doing this now as part of legal. What was I doing 14 years ago? I can't even think. I was still in high school, I think. But obviously, you did say that you're selling investment products, and that's some of the part of what you do. I want you to just give us a brief intro into what Federated Hermes is all about, and how specifically the in-house lawyer fits into helping the company achieve its goals.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Well, Federated Hermes is an investment management company. We started out actually as Hermes in the UK, and we were acquired by a US firm called Federated in 2018. So that's still a fairly kind of new relationship for us, and we're still really kind of building the relationship with our US parent. But we were originally set up by the BT, or British Telecom Pension Scheme, in the 1980s. to manage their pension scheme assets. So I don't know how much you know about pension schemes and investment. But
a little, not enough to have an opinion, to be honest.
Well, to give a very kind of simple explanation, if you imagine that a pension scheme is like a big pot of money, and there are employees who are currently employed and they're making regular payments into the pension pot. And then there are also people who have retired who are taking their retirement. So they're being paid money out of the pension pot. And in very simple terms, the pension scheme has to be run in such a way that there's enough money to pay out to all of the people that have retired, usually for the rest of their lives. So the money in the pot has to be invested in a fairly kind of risk-averse way to make sure that the money in the pot doesn't go down, it only goes up.
So when I come back, I still have my money, I guess.
Exactly. So the kind of traditional school of thought is that the most appropriate way to invest that money is to spread it across different types of assets, so that in circumstances where, say, real estate is doing poorly, there may be other investments that are doing better. So, you don't put all your eggs in one basket. You spread the risk into different investments. So what Federated Hermes does is it runs multiple different funds and investment products for pension schemes to invest their money into. So we have investments in real estate, we have investments in private equity, in infrastructure, and by infrastructure I mean things like sort of gas and electricity companies, and we invest in things like motorways and the railways. And also traditional equities as well, and lots more kind of funky products on the side. So really that's what we do. But the other, I suppose, thing that makes working here interesting is that we've got a really strong history of being what we call responsible investors. So our corporate belief is that by being an investor and by deciding where we make investments on behalf of our clients, we have a responsibility to use our power as investors to make the world a better place. So not wanting to sound too kind of hippie about it, but when you're an investor, it gives you certain influence over the companies or the assets that you're investing in. So we try and use that influence for good. So we were very early adopters of ESG, environmental, social and governance factors, and trying to kind of drive positive outcomes really on environmental, social and governance factors. So that's really a very kind of high level description of the business. And then as a lawyer working for Federated Hermes, my job is to there's so many aspects to it. So we're regularly entering into agreements with our investors, our clients. So we're the service provider and they're the client. So we have to negotiate and manage the risk around those. We're also kind of always supporting the growth and expansion of our business. So lots of the projects I've been involved in over the last few years have been around setting up branches around the world. So that's been really interesting, and different experiences in different jurisdictions. So most recently we've just completed our Japanese subsidiary setup. So I'm now I know a lot more now about
doing to different corners of the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And then also, as a business, we have to engage with a lot of suppliers. So we're entering into agreements with our suppliers. We're entering into a lot of confidentiality agreements, which is where we have a great relationship with Radiant. They help us with that. I guess it's a risk management role, but also it's kind of being a commercial advisor and helping the business kind of navigate whatever the strategy is trying to achieve, but in a way that tries to kind of minimize or avoid any legal issues that may crop up later.
Okay. And given sort of the volume the volume of agreements that you handle, I'm sure there's a lot of contracts that come through the legal team, and managing huge. All that risk. How do you then do it? How do you then go through and say, okay, this is the best way to approach, this is the best way to make sure that we're risk averse without sort of slowing down the process, the contracting process, but as well as making sure that you're still commercially minded and protect your interests to the best of your abilities?
So I think that's where experience comes in. And, anyone new, I suppose there's a few different aspects to this, but, anyone new that starts in our legal team, they may have experience of the market. They may have an understanding of what our peers are doing in the market and what positions they're taking on particular kinds of contracts, but they won't know what the Federated Hermes approach is. So I think that, it's always a balancing act between what's market standard, and we don't want to be taking an approach that's very different to our peers, but also what's the risk appetite of Federated Hermes at the moment, and we take guidance from our risk and compliance team on that, and I think that for the most part there's an understood position on what risk we're willing to take, but sometimes a new issue will come up that we haven't considered before, and then if I'm dealing with it, I'll discuss it with our general counsel in London, who's my immediate boss, and we'll see if we can come to a sensible conclusion between the two of us. And then if we think it's too big an issue for us to deal with, then we'll escalate it to our US parent company and the legal team over there, and we'll discuss it with them. And I think that there's usually I think that when you've got the experience behind you, and when you've worked somewhere as I have, I've normally got a bit of an instinct about these things. But it doesn't harm to kind of sense check that with colleagues, and especially if it's a new or particularly kind of risky issue that comes up.
And with time and with experience, you get to know sort of the vibe of the company, what we generally accept, what we generally don't accept, what we find was very, very risky, and what we think is okay. And then with time, you kind of get the hang of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's brilliant. What are the biggest sort of challenges that you face in terms of just managing Federated Hermes? You did say that you're going into different countries, with different laws, different jurisdictions, which I guess maybe you did say you're going into Japan. Do you then employ lawyers that are very well versed in Japan law to kind of feedback and say, okay, this is our objectives? When you go into Africa, do you then get sort of external law firms? How do you manage that challenge?
Yeah, I mean, exactly as you say, we have to get the local advice from local lawyers. So I think the other point to mention is that because we're a regulated business, that investment management is regulated in most, I think all jurisdictions. So it's not just the law; it's the local regulation we need to understand and make sure that we comply with as well. And that varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. So it's quite a complex sort of set of rules and parameters in which we're trying to run our business, and we have to get the appropriate advice, and there simply just isn't that expertise in our team. So there's nobody in my team here who has Japanese law experience. We just don't. So we have to go out and get the local advice, but it's not just legal advice. It's the tax advice, and it's the regulatory advice as well, and
a lot that goes into it.
There's a huge amount that goes into it, and I think that we're even having to educate our colleagues, our stakeholders within the business, as to really how much is involved, because they will come to us and say, we want to set up a new branch in Spain. How long will that take? Can we take someone on? And they have no idea of what's involved.
Yeah.
And actually, there's a huge amount involved, and these things take time, and you can't just rush into it. You've got to do them properly, because there are really serious consequences of getting it wrong.
Yeah, of course. And then, sorry, just to close off, in terms of the next 5 years, what are you most excited about from a Federated Hermes point of view, and in terms of just growing the business and just, from a commercial perspective, what are the most exciting things that you see on the horizon?
Gosh, I think it's
personally and of course from a business front.
I think on the business front, it's the continued growth. It's the working more closely with our US parent company and learning from them. There's a huge amount that they do that their business is a little bit different from ours. So I think there's a lot that they can learn from us and we can learn from them. And kind of being a part of a bigger organization is a great opportunity. And then I think it spills over into the personal, really, because then that just kind of keeps producing more material and more areas for me to understand better, to learn and to grow. And I think that just kind of the continued expansion and growth, and then the challenges that are thrown at the legal team from that, and having to kind of juggle all of that. It's exciting times.
And I guess nothing keeps one more motivated than constant change and seeing new things and more challenging things. And I guess that's how you keep, maybe 6 months from now, as you did say, you'll think about it every 6 months. Am I still cool here? Am I still happy here? Yeah. I think the more challenging it is, the more different stuff you're exposed to, the more motivated you are to keep going.
Yeah, I think so. I hope so.
Awesome, Jenny. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. It's been a really interesting conversation.
No, thank you. Thank you.
I know you just came from a holiday, but do you have any big plans for the summer? Have you had your big summer?
Well, we have, so not really. My wife works in professional cricket. And so her work is really kicking off over the summer. So it's quite bad time, really. So we've got a week where me and the kids are going to join her kind of on tour with the cricket team, but just around the UK. So we're having kind of UK short breaks, but that's okay. There's some beautiful parts of the UK to explore. So
awesome, Jenny. Thanks for your time. Everyone, please check out obviously our Radiant Lawcast available on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram, LinkedIn, if you just want to see the interesting things that we've been up to. And until next time, it's a bye from me. Cheers.
Thanks.